Also August 11th, later 10:29 p.m. Venus conjuncts Jupiter. Oof, some relief. This is a good one. This is what we all basically been waiting for, just to catch our breath. So Venus comes together with Jupiter at 14 degrees of Cancer. So again, if you have your astrology chart, if you don't, go get it. Look at 14 degrees of Cancer. Venus and Jupiter come together there. And then what are they in relationship in the rest of your chart? What does it mean? What house is it happening in? So the expression of the lady, the goddess Venus, caring for others, in Cancer, and fighting for the vulnerable, protecting the child, protecting the vulnerable. This is like the expansion of that. This is like all of society is going to take this collective breath of nurturing and protecting the innocent, the vulnerable, the child within. This is a perfect day for like luxurious self-care, right? Then Venus on August 13th, 4:34 a.m. Venus at 15 degrees Cancer trines Lilith at 15 degrees of Scorpio. So here's two different feminine dynamics in a supportive relationship. So after interacting with Jupiter, Venus comes into a new phase and experience of emotional empowerment. There's an opportunity to face the darkness, Lilith and Scorpio, the underworld, the darkness that the feminine has been trudging through. And I know you know what I mean. There's an opportunity to get some emotional care and nurturing and support in that regard. Doesn't end it, it just brings some, it brings like collective resources to bear. Jupiter is like our social safety net. It's our social dynamic. So we're going to feel, the feminine and women are going to feel a little more supported by society. Okay, August 14th, 7:04 p.m. Mercury now at 5 degrees of Leo, sextiles Mars at 5 degrees of Libra. So Mercury is going to direct now. It's no longer in retrograde. Our creative and expressive mind supports our collective masculine, which is focused on the beauty of balance in relationship. August 16th, I gotta kind of moving along here. This video is long. August 16th, 11:57 a.m. Venus at 19 degrees Cancer trines North Node in Pisces. So the nurturing, caring feminine gets to support our collective evolution. There it is, folks. Took a breath on that one. So the feminine is really kind of being given the opportunity to take the lead. Take the lead back. Take the power back. Fix all this broken male toxicity. It's a lot. August 17th, 10:32 p.m. Mercury at 7 degrees of Leo, sextiles Mars at 7 degrees of Libra. Our minds are focused on the ego's expression of passion. Passion works to support the masculine dynamic in relationships. There's a masculine expression of beauty and creativity. Wow, that'd be nice. And it shall. August 19th, 10:29 a.m. Sun at 26 degrees 59 minutes, so basically 27 degrees of Leo. Trines Chiron in Aries, who's retrograde. Our collective and personal awareness is brought to bear on this long evaluation of the wounded masculine, right? Chiron in Aries is this whole phase of us dealing with the wounds of the masculine, the wounds of the warrior, and hopefully trying to heal those. And when it's in retrograde, it brings it more internally, more personally, more within. And then the sun's going to shine a big light on that. So another way to think about this is the sun, our collective awareness in trine with Chiron and Aries. It's kind of like this big spotlight will be shown on this healing, wounded healing of the masculine warrior that we've all been going through. And August 19th, maybe there'll be some example of that. Excuse me. So here's a long transit. Well, it's not long, but we'll feel it for a good week. August 21st through the 28th, we have a Yod. If you don't know about Yods, Google Y-O-D, Yod in astrology, and it's known as the finger of God, the fate of God. It's kind of represented by Uranus in a sense, because it's like this formation that just sends energy through the world and triggers change. So this Yod, which is two planet, so like a long triangle, one planet here, 150 degrees, both to two other planets that are sextiled at 60 degrees. So isosceles triangle, yeah, whatever. Geometry was not my best class, but I was good in math. So sorry, the sun transitions from Leo into Virgo, so 28 degrees of Leo into 4 degrees of Virgo, as it forms this Yod with Saturn, Neptune on one side, so 4 planets, and Pluto on the other. So the Saturn, Neptune, Pluto sextile has been there for a while, but then the sun lines up and does an inconjunct to both of those. So the massive changes that we've been experiencing are in the Saturn-Neptune transit into Aries and the Pluto transit into Aquarius are both catalyzing a fated awakening of our awareness about purity, innocence, beauty, and health. This again speaks to this whole child abuse and sex trafficking case of Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Trump. Probably more revelations. Maybe the Epstein files will finally come out. So just a little side note. I know we're going real long here, but so there's a way to translate a transit, in astrology into English that's very brief and succinct. And then, you know, like anything, poetry or writing, you could spend a whole book on one of these transits, literally. The dynamics of the relationship between these entities and how that manifests in the world and for us personally. So just making a note of that. These are really brief summations. Again, in the advent of the internet, you can Google any one of these phrases, any one of these transits, and you'll probably find several websites explaining them to go in more depth. So, excuse me, I don't usually talk this much. August 22nd, 1:34 p.m., Sun enters Virgo. We're going to have the Sun enters the Virgo, and then the Moon comes later, and they form a new moon, Sun and Moon together in Virgo, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It's actually happening the same day. There's 3 transits on August 22nd. There's the Sun entering Virgo at 1:34 p.m. There's Venus square Chiron at 7:30 p.m., 7:28. And then at 11:06 p.m. is that new moon in Virgo. So the moon catches up and comes into Virgo with the sun at 0 degrees. So let me talk about the sun and the moon, and then I'll get back to the Venus square Chiron. So sun enters first, followed by the moon, which means that we are aware of the importance of health, innocence, purity, work and service. Before the moon, the child or the child within comes to meet us there. Right? So sun enters Virgo first, and then moon follows right after the same day. So generally speaking, you wouldn't even necessarily distinguish the timing of the sun first, but maybe it's just good to note that, right? So that our awareness enters into Virgo, and then the child steps in the doorway 10 hours later. So at 7:30, Venus is at 26 degrees of Cancer and squares Chiron at 26 degrees of Aries. As Venus is about to finish her travels through the sign of Cancer, she has the pleasure, wink wink, of squaring Chiron, the wounded healer, at almost 27 degrees of Aries. So this is a conflict between the sensitive and emotional aspects of the feminine, Venus in Cancer, and the wounds of the masculine. Because it's in the astrology, I get to name it over and over again. But you see this pattern that we're really dealing with in society. I mean, it's being reflected in the astrology, right? It's not just something we made up. We're doing it on purpose. Dealing with the wounded masculine, right? Bringing the feminine power to bear. So August 24th, 12:14 a.m., middle of the night, sun is at 1 degree of Virgo and it squares Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini. Excuse me. This is a collective awareness moment where the health, innocence, and purity, maybe known as AI, is being questioned whether it will truly serve humanity. The evolution of the global mind and technology is being reserved for a moment to question its health and integrity. Hopefully. Right? I'm trying to translate how I imagine the planets are interacting and what that means in society, for society, what's happening in the world. And that one really spoke to me about AI. Excuse me. August 25th, 9:30 or 9:27 a.m., Venus enters Leo. So Venus transitions into the summer season of creative self-expression, drama, performance. It's all about the feminine coming back to the heart, right? Coming back to who am I? What are my passions? What do I want to do with this life? And then the same day at 5:55 p.m., 5:55, Venus at 0 degrees, 25 minutes of Leo, trines Saturn at 0 degrees, 25 minutes of Aries. These are the exact alignment times for parts of this formation called a cradle that I'm going to get to hopefully soon. And just as Venus is changing signs, she has a bunch of consequential interactions. There's going to be a whole bunch of Venus things happening now. First, she has a supportive trine with Saturn at 0 degrees of Aries. Basically, the forms and structures around containing the male warrior energy is helping the feminine expression to create a whole new performance. Also, August 25th at 10:57 p.m. later that night, Mercury at 16 degrees of Leo squares Lilith in Scorpio. So Mercury gets caught in a conflict with the independent and empowered feminine dynamic. As in, our mind must wrestle with the expressing our creative passions, while the repressed feminine power investigates her own power dynamics and the manipulation or repression of those. Kind of makes sense with what I've been talking about. It's kind of like the mind is in conflict with this empowered transformation of feminine dynamics. And then we have a minor grand trine, a new one. This time, Venus trines Saturn and Neptune and sextiles Uranus. So Venus kind of takes the place of where Pluto was. And this happens at basically 1 degree. Venus is at 1 degree Leo. Saturn and Neptune. Actually, this is different than where Pluto was. Excuse me. Pluto's at Aquarius. It's the opposite of where Pluto was. So in a sense, well, I'll explain that in the next transit. This is an aspect called the minor grand trine, but it's a piece of this whole cradle trapeze formation. But it's important to recognize that there is a grand trine between Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. So in the same month as that kite aspect formation at the beginning of the month, now at the end of the month, we have Venus trine Saturn, Neptune. So, and it's in the 1st degree of these signs. Saturn is actually at 0 degrees, but Neptune is at 1. And it it brings the feminine working with the structures and disillusionment of the male masculine warrior is both being supported by this upgrade in our mental activity, the insights of the mind, Uranus and Gemini. And that trine is inside of a cradle. Excuse me. Otherwise known as the trapeze formation. You have Pluto at 1 degree Aquarius, sextile Saturn at 0 degrees, and Neptune at 1 degrees of Aries, sextile Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini, sextile Venus at 1 degree of Leo. So Pluto and Venus are actually opposite. And then sextile Saturn and Neptune, sextile Uranus. So it's making this basket, cradle, trapeze formation with that little mini triangle in the middle. Sorry, it would be that way. The cradle is made up of 5 supportive aspects, 2 trines and 3 sextiles, compared to only 1 challenging aspect, opposition. So it's very similar to a kite in the sense of you have all these supportive relationships and then the 1 opposition. This is like half of the kite. You have all these supportive relationships and the 1 opposition between, in this case, Pluto and Venus. The opposition acts as a protective wall against outside forces. So different from the kite, this is like half of a circle almost. And that opposition draws a hard line and it acts as like a safety zone with the world on the outside, and we experience all these supportive relationships on this side. So in this case, we're wanting to hide under the blanket created by this Pluto-Venus opposition, where Pluto is working with Saturn and Neptune, who is working with Uranus, who is working with Venus. So again, all 3 of the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are working with Saturn and Aries and Venus and Leo. Our Saturn and Neptune and Aries and Venus and Leo. Our feminine self-expression is getting a boost from genius insight as we are putting form to what it means to be a spiritual warrior, while transforming all of our roles in a new utopian society. So You know, we can talk about the moon and the sun and the interactions that are happening on a daily basis. But in the background, these massive shifts are happening as if we didn't notice. And in astrology, it's just profound to have yods, grand trines, minor grand trines, kite formations, trapeze and cradles, all happening at the same time, all happening with transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. It's just incredible. I can barely wrap my mind around it because it's so much, right? I put down, this is kind of irrelevant, but I put down the exact times when Venus sextiles Uranus, Venus trines Neptune, Venus opposite Pluto within that formation. So they're all just the exact alignment times, and I wrote that down. And that's on August 26th. August 27th, 9:50 p.m., Jupiter 17 degrees of Cancer, trines Lilith in Scorpio. So I describe this as, wow, this is just a super expansive expansion of our caring, nurturing feelings and emotional sensitivities regarding the feminine dark night of the soul, right? Lilith in Scorpio, which has been happening now, I wish I had the exact dates. It's been a while. She's only at 17 degrees, so she's like halfway through her transit of Scorpio. But literally, this is the dark night of the soul, the feminine. And I apologize. People who know me as a goddess in a man's body. I feel all this. So I'm right there with you. We're all feeling the collective expansion of social vulnerability that supports liberation of female power and empowerment. Boom. August 28th, 5:08 p.m., Uranus, 1 degree of Gemini, sextiles Neptune, and 1 degree of Aries. That's just an exact alignment of that previous cradle trapeze formation. But those two line up exactly on the 28th rather than the 26th. So then August 31st, 12:44 p.m., Mercury in Leo trines Chiron in Aries. As Mercury now is now direct, rounding out the month, it comes into contact with Chiron, doing a healing dance of the masculine warrior. Thus, we all get to see the collective mental reckoning and expression of this process that has been going on since Chiron entered Aries. Yeah, I had the dates. Chiron entered Aries in 2018. Beginning April 17th of 2018. It'll stay there until June 19th of 2026. It'll go retrograde back out of Aries. It'll not retrograde. It'll go forward into Taurus for just 3 months. So it'll just blip into Taurus, then it'll come back on September 18th of 26, all the way until, and then go forward at some point and leave Aries on April 14th, 2027. So from 2018 to 2027, Chiron in Aries, the wounded healer of the masculine dynamic. During the Chiron in Aries transit, people born between 1968, 1977, hello, that's me, will be going through one of the most significant transits of their lives, their Chiron return. So it comes back to the place it was when you were born. The Chiron return takes place around the ages of 50 to 51. Hello. It's our soul's need to completely wipe away all those toxicities that have potentially been holding us back on our life path. Woo! Can't wait. Please. And then I have, Pluto retrograde. I have a bunch of the retrogrades here. So this time there's just these huge formations that I've already talked about. But then we have all these planets going into retrograde, right? Pluto started on May 4th, so it's been there for a while, and it will stop and go direct on October 14th. It started going retrogrades at 3 degrees 49 minutes of Aquarius. It goes back to 1 degree 22 minutes, and then it goes forward. So we're basically getting like a huge review of what Pluto in Aquarius means, just the first 3 degrees. Then Neptune's been in retrograde since July 4th, and it'll be there till December 10th. And it started retrograde at 2 degrees of Aries, going back to 29 degrees of Pisces by December 10th, and then it'll go forward again. So Neptune gets to review the first 2 degrees of Aries, while slipping back into Pisces for one last peak review of karma in the last degree. Saturn's retrograde started at 1 degree 56 minutes of Aries on July 12th, last month. It'll go back to 25 degrees of Pisces by November 27th, and then it'll go forward again. So Saturn didn't even make it to 2 degrees of Aries before turning around and revisiting the last 5 degrees of Pisces. This is my stuff. I guess there's another last-ditch effort to materialize the spiritual realm before leaving for good and spending the next 2.5 years in Aries. Saturn will stay in Aries from February 13th of 2026 until April 12th of 2028 without going into other signs. Then we had this Mercury retrograde started at 15 degrees. Leo is backtrack. Will backtrack to 4 degrees of Leo. It started July 17th. It'll backtrack till August 11th at 4 degrees of Leo, and then it'll go forward again. And we were finishing up the second half of Mercury retrograde, the communication and review around matters of the heart, creativity, and self-expression. We are finishing up. Chiron retrograde started July 30th at 27 degrees of Aries. It's going to go back to 22 degrees of Aries, so only 5 degrees change from July 30th until January 2nd of 2026. Chiron will finally be out of Aries with a brief interlude into Taurus in June of 2026 till September. And then it comes back into Aries September 2026 until April of 2027. And then it'll finally be out of the healing of the wounded masculine. So this is just a massive collective healing that we're trying to do around the wounded masculine. And then it'll go into Taurus, and it'll be there until 2033. There's so much I could say. Uranus retrograde is coming up. It's going to start on September 6th, and it'll go backwards until February 4th of 2026. It starts at 1 degree 27 minutes of Gemini, so just the first degree of Gemini. Isn't it wild? Like, we're getting these transpersonal planets doing a retrograde within the first few degrees of their new sign. So it's like jumping in there, seeing what it's like to have this planet in this new sign, and then we're going to backtrack. We're going to go backwards. We're going to review what that is. Go touchstone the sign before, one last visit, and then come back and do the process again. So although this hasn't happened yet, Uranus gets to conduct a review of the first degree, literally just the first degree, introduction of what Uranus and Gemini means or feels like to have our collective mind upgraded. This could be another opportunity to review AI and the interjection of mental shifts and communication. Lastly, Jupiter retrograde, starts in November 11th, and goes till March 11th of 2026. It starts in November at 25 degrees of Cancer, goes back to 15 degrees of Cancer, and then it'll go forward again on March 11th, 2026. So as well, the Jupiter retrograde is not happening until November 11th. This will be a 10-degree review of the social expansion of emotional sensitivity, Jupiter and Cancer. So we've been having this like social expansion of emotional sensitivity, what it means to be nurturing, what it means to be protective of the innocent, of the feminine, of the child in society, the child within. Epstein cases, hello. This is an opportunity for all of us to go within and be with our own internal sensitivity, our own child within. How would we want to treat the child within? What should we do in society to protect that? The last thing, and this is a big one, but I'm going to make it small. And I talked about this last month in July. The Saturn conjunct Neptune, right? I was talking about this with the kite, with the grand trines. Saturn and Neptune have been within within 2 degrees of each other since May 14th until September 27th. And then again from January 14th of 2026 until March 27th of 2026. So they're doing this dance together, right? Where we're gonna, basically we've been feeling it for a while, and for a couple more, well, like another year. Yeah, I spoke about this actually more in the June report. And let me just read something. So although Saturn and Neptune don't officially conjunct, they're not actually exactly together until February 20th of 2026. They're less than a degree apart between May 14th and September 17th. And again from January 14th until March 27th of 2026. Saturn and Neptune have been together, but not necessarily conjunct, since March of 2023 in the sign of Pisces. On March 31st, Neptune moved into Aries. Then by May 26th, Saturn moved into Aries, and I talked about that in my first report. Saturn and Neptune shall be both in Aries until September 2nd, when Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces. Neptune then retrogrades back into Pisces in October 23rd. They will both stay in Pisces until January 27th, when Neptune crosses back in Aries first, and Saturn joins Neptune on February 13th. They're the exact same degree on February 2026, like I said, but both occupy the same conjunction until March 27th, 2026. Oh boy, this is a long report. This woman, Ann Whitaker, describes it as this: the seminal conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in Aries in February of 2026 will signal the final dissolution of the global capitalist ideologies that were seeded in the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989. It will also signal the end of the current geopolitical balance of power. And I put the link to her report there. She published it on Google January 26th of this year, 2025. I hope not, but we're seeing that, right? We're seeing the U.S. kind of leaving our alliances post-World War II and forming a new global structure. Anyways, it's dark outside. It is, what time is it? It is, wow, 8:18 p.m. And this report is way too long. It's an hour long. But hope you enjoy it. And like I said, I'll put my email in the description. Email me if you would like to get this transit document. And if you know me personally, you can call me or text me, whatever. And say, yes, please send it to me. Give me your email. And then you'll have the document to play with throughout the month of August. So thank you. Aloha. Take care, everyone. It's a wild ride. Signing off. Care Bear.